Push the button, Frank.
All right.
All right.
This is well, our last year. Hoorah. Goodbye till the next year.
Yeah. The last show of the year, the last show of the decade. We start the 2020s next, well, heck, who am I kidding? Tomorrow, if you're catching us on next Tuesday. As we record this, it's the 26th. It's the day after Christmas. How was your Christmas, Eloy?
It was interesting. Like we had been talking earlier, I went to my aunt's house and they had ham and also an assortment of all sorts of goodies, and I got some whiskey. I got some beard balm.
Oh, nice.
With different scents, which is really cool. So I got that, and I brought home a bunch of photo albums, which were my mom's, and my grandmother had it in her closet, and I brought them home so I can continue doing, digitization of the family photos and all that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, now I got to interrupt you for a minute here. What is beard balm?
Beard balm is...
I have never heard of it, and I had beards most of my life.
There's been a big explosion in like beard growth. I don't know if you've noticed. A lot of people, it's like a trendy thing.
Yeah.
Well, I've had a beard on and off, since my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this product. Here's one.
Okay. All right.
This one's called beard jelly. I guess they're all beard jelly. And what it is it has a fragrance. It's subtle. And you mix it into your skin and even into your skin and your beard. And it just makes it, it's like hair care,
Okay.
Like,
all right.
And it's really has a nice smell.
Cool.
The ladies won't be able to keep their hands out of the cookie jar.
I don't know, man. I don't know. You got to let them get close enough to you to get a whiff. That's all.
Well, it says it says it here. They won't be able to get their hands out of the cookie jar right there in the label.
Oh, okay. All right.
So how was your Christmas?
Oh man, we had a double whammy. We went over to my wife's sister's house and had Christmas with that side of the family on Christmas Eve.
Okay.
Then went over to my daughter's house on Christmas Day and had Christmas with that side of the family. And today we're just decompressing. So it was an adventure-filled 2 days.
Nice.
So, for those wondering here live on YouTube, hi out there, y'all. That's why we did not have a show on Tuesday night, is because just scheduling conflicts, and I didn't figure there'd be any way that I would be home here in time to record. So that's why we're 2 days late, kind of throwing everybody off here.
Yeah, we've been doing this program for the past 2 years, would we say?
No, we had our 1 year in August, so about a year and 4 months.
Year and 4 months. Okay.
Yeah, and we haven't missed a week so far. We've become close, but we've not missed a week so far, nor taken a week off.
Well, so it's an interesting thing because this year, I don't know if it happened last year, everything fell as far as the holidays, the day of the holiday or right the day before or something like that. Yeah. Every holiday has been like that.
Yep. And this year we had our Christmas show came out Christmas Eve, and our New Year's show will come out New Year's Eve. So
it's an incredible thing. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get a little bit more notice next year. Let's see what happens.
Well, the way I see it, and for those listening, we're actually on a weekly basis getting together and talking some fun things, and it's a nice catalog, because I've been thinking in the past, people didn't necessarily, unless they had shows themselves, record in this fashion and
Right.
preserve all these conversations and things. So on that level, it's a beautiful thing, you know.
Yep. It is. It's a lot of fun. I mean, just think of it as hanging over the back fence with a cup of coffee and just BSing with your neighbor.
What I would like to do in some future time, but it is quite a task because we do have a lot of episodes. And by the way, you could find our previous. They're great shows to kick back and listen to because they are interesting conversations. We have a website and it's called Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com, and you can go back and check out. They're titled and they have descriptions, so you can check out before you read before you buy.
Yeah. Try
Which,
before you buy.
yeah. So we do a lot of these things. Today I ran across something interesting during the holiday season, and it was a video that someone had put up, and it was, believe it or not, it said Kmart 1974 Kmart Christmas music was the title of that video.
Okay. 1974 Kmart Christmas music.
Yes. And
Okay.
so, and in the description, the lady says that this is a re-upload. Well, not necessarily, but we did take the music and we've uploaded it here. This is from the tapes that they used to play at Kmart round the clock when people were shopping back in 1974. And I pressed play. It was so curious for me. I mean, YouTube, got it really right for me on that one.
Yeah.
And it had the Kmart music, and it was really nice. It was sort of like that big band music and instrumental, and really cool, man. Really cool.
So that was back when it was still Muzak, the canned music, and they weren't playing like Rocking Around the Christmas Tree or Santa Baby or things like that. It was the old.
Yeah, it's like standards and instrumental, and it's really like I sat there. I swear to you, it's like an hour and a half to 2 hour thing. I didn't sit there the whole time, but I did listen to a couple of the songs, and I couldn't find myself I had to force myself to stop because it brought back some really nice. Although I came along in 75, right?
Yeah,
but that kind of stuff was playing when I was going to the stores with my parents. In the 70s and into the 80s easily. But this one was 1974 Kmart music Christmas.
Well, thinking about it now, the music that you hear in stores today, because it's all fully licensed, original, the stuff that we were listening to on the radio back in the day, they didn't used to do that. I mean, Muzak was a brand name, Muzak, and it was basically canned music that was piped in. It was a monthly subscription service that the store paid for, and it was just to provide background noise. But it was all, I mean, Muzak had its own band that played old standards that were royalty free, public domain stuff, and that was basically what you heard. They didn't.
So this
have
could be that
big group, so it wasn't. Yeah, that's exactly what it was, because it wasn't like music that you would hear on the radio. Now you walk into a big box store, a grocery store during the holidays, and you'll hear, you'll hear Bing Crosby, you'll hear Andy Williams, you'll hear all of the big performers that you would hear on the radio if you tuned into a station playing Christmas music.
Yeah.
It used to be that way because they didn't want to pay the big bucks to the big name performers.
I mean, it's a great, and it's funny because you have to play a certain type of music when you're for people that are shopping. You don't want it to be upsetting or make them feel like they have to leave the store. Like there's a whole there's a whole thing, behind it.
There is, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into that. And if you listen to the music, it will go through certain cycles. Like if you pay attention to it starting about a half hour before the store closes, the tempo of the music will be speeded up just slightly. And they'll play faster music and fewer ballads to get people in. It kind of pumps you up and gets you going.
Yeah.
And you don't think about it, but you find yourself moving faster, and that's for get people out of there quicker.
Yeah.
Because they're getting ready to close. So, But
Go home sometime.
yeah, in the mornings it's pretty calm, pretty smooth, pretty mellow. We used to call that elevator music because I kid you not, you would get into any elevator and it would be playing on a little speaker, real quiet, so you could talk over it, but it was in the background. So you had quote unquote something to listen to instead of standing there in awkward silence with a stranger next to you as you go up to your floor.
I was at as I mentioned, at my aunt's house, and I got to speaking with my cousin, and in his room, he's got this little machine that sits on a dresser, and it just plays different ambient sounds like waves, the ocean, forest, rain, and you could choose and this and that. And dude, I was in there, we were talking, and I didn't even, when we were talking, I didn't even pay attention to it, but at some point I started feeling really relaxed and started to get like and it was, and then I noticed it because I was trying to why am I and I said, oh man, is this playing? And he says, yeah man, I this is a great thing. And I looked at a little machine, you could pick all the different settings, and holy smokes, man, I could definitely, I'm gonna install one in my room because it's good.
Yeah, especially if you live right there by that busy road, that masks a lot of background noise, a lot of outdoor noise, and
I can't hear any ambient. Yeah, no, we don't have any ambient. It's all city.
Are you sure? Or are you? Oh, okay, all right. Well,
what do you mean?
Yeah, but even that's an ambient noise of its own. The sounds of traffic and this, that, and the other.
Oh yeah. It is, but I don't like that.
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm getting. It kind of would mask that out, and I could.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
That would be a good thing. It's funny you mentioned that because my wife likes to sleep with a fan running next to on her side of the bed, blowing on her. She's one of those. She would sleep with the window open if I would let her get away with it, but it's just too ding dong cold for me.
Yeah.
So I have gotten so used to that fan running in the background, we don't hear anything at all.
Hence what happened to
which could explain what happened the other day, but or a few weeks back. But yeah, the weird thing about it is when she went into the hospital for her surgery, I shut the fan off because it's I don't need this thing. And I had a heck of a time trying to get to sleep because that thing wasn't running.
Yeah.
It's just, you get so used to something like that. And it just, it's out of place without it. Cause you could hear every frog or cricket outside or whatever. And it's come on, man, what's going on here?
Well, I was talking to, I don't know, on Hangouts or something. And I'm used to having every room, wherever I'm at, I have those wall ACs in practically every room of the house. And growing up was the same. And I've always lived with the hum of an AC going.
Yeah.
And whenever the power's out or whatever, or for whatever reason, it's just, I'm comfortable with that sound.
It's eerily silent without it, isn't it?
It's too much, man.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, see, that's why city kids get so paranoid when they go camping for the first time, because they don't hear traffic. They don't hear, the AC running or the neighbor's dog barking or something like that. They get outside and all they hear is frogs and crickets, and they're like, what the hell is that? And it could be a squirrel running from tree to tree, or a raccoon, climbing a tree somewhere off in the distance, but they hear every snap of every little twig, and it's like, what was that? What was that? What was that?
I was telling you mentioned that about city person, and so even though it's a weird thing because there's nothing bad to look at or good to look at it as, but I was talking to someone recently, and I said, well, you know what, it's true. I'm from the city. You can't, but now that's a mouthful if you say compared to New York, let's say. You know what I'm saying? So I'm from the city because there's population, but it's not.
But you're in a unique position because you could almost throw a rock into the Everglades, and you can't get any further away from city than that. So
it's true. But my whole bit was that I'm actually the first generation, as far as I can tell, going back in time, that is a city person
Yeah,
because everybody else was out in the country.
yes, sweet, kind of sort of like the I live in White City, and it's kind of sort of the same with us. This was considered the sticks. Well, it still is to a lot of people because it was out away from the big city, and
Right.
Sweetwater was the same. It was out away from Miami. Miami just kind of grew into it.
Yeah, all around it.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah.
So it's a weird thing, at the same time. So it's like, I'm so I'm the first generation to really have big city, because even my folks, my dad, he was from a town, but you can't say it's a city in Cuba because it was away from Havana, which is a city, has been a city, for over 300 years. But
right.
He was from a little town, which had a couple of hotels. It had a bank, and it had many stores and stuff, but it was a town surrounded by fields, farmlands. So it was like isolated. And on my mom's side, even the same. And then going back a little bit, it got even worse because they were in the mountains, these people. And so they're all farm type thing. And I swear to you, it calls to me now, like, that kind of, rural, it calls to me. However, I need a Walmart within driving.
Don't worry. No, don't worry. There are towns out there where the Walmart employees outnumber the population.
Perfect.
So, yeah. Don't worry. You'll never be able to escape Wally World.
See, that's another way of looking at it too. It's like I wouldn't be able to escape it even if I wanted to.
Well, but see, you also you've lived both extremes, because it was still kind of considered out in the country when you were growing up, because the city hadn't enveloped it by that time.
When my folks bought here, there were 3,000 people here. So that's not small. Well, is that small? 3,000.
Sure. Yeah, that's small.
There were 3,000 people here. I came maybe 4 years after that, and I'm sure that by that time it was like 7,000 to 8,000 people. So that's kind of where I, during my time coming up, and it exponentially.
Yeah.
By the time the 80s rolled in, it started to climb.
Well, with the popularity of the college across, or the university across the street from you there, basically, it just exploded. So
that's been recent, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's been a recent 10
but
15 year.
But what I'm getting at is you not just witnessed, you lived the evolution from going from a small town to the big city.
100%.
Grew up around you. See, I've either lived in small towns out in a rural area, or I've lived in a big city. I've never lived that evolution.
It's crazy.
Medford is the big city right here close to us, which isn't saying much because the population's just a little over 80,000. And when I left in 1982, we had just gone over 50,000. So the population hasn't even doubled over the course of 32 years. I was gone for 32 years.
Yeah.
The population hadn't even doubled. So,
well, there's another thing also that blurs the lines in this situation, because where you're at and where you grew up, within what I know, is that you have valleys and then mountain ranges, as you've mentioned before.
Yeah.
And so you have pockets.
Right.
Whereas places like this or LA, it's a continuum with no interruption. So once things grow up around you, it's like a grid for miles and miles in every direction. It kind of sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen that too. My wife Linda's from Southern California, and that is the case. I mean, now they're in valleys as well, but they're in huge valleys, and the sprawl is just uncontrolled.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same around here. Down here in the flat, I won't say the growth is uncontrolled, but there aren't a lot of places to build because there's still a lot of agricultural land around here.
Yeah.
And it's been owned and agricultural, well, since they started settling here in the 1850s. So I don't see it being developed anytime soon. Uh, and the land use laws here in this state, Oregon, for those who don't know, are so complex that we have urban growth boundaries. I mean, the little town I live in of 5,000 people, we still have urban growth boundaries and population density standards and this, that, and the other. So, there are a lot of areas out there where they call it's zoned rural residential with a 5-acre minimum. There are some lots out there that are smaller than 5 acres, but they were there before these land use laws come in. So in other words, you can buy a piece of property out there, but it has to be 5 acres or more before you can build a house.
I mean, I think that's a good look. It just depends on a person's, that with large populations, you have the ability to do a lot of commerce and whatnot. So that's the draw, and everybody wants to, do that. But I'm more, and it's a funny thing, but I'm more towards, I like that idea that you have to buy X amount and keep it like broad and distilled, because with overpopulation, people need to live, so obviously, but with overpopulation comes a whole host of problems. Intimacy, and that sort of like Mayberry sort of vibe. I like that way more, regardless of the shortcomings of that. There's something warm about that, and I'm partial to that.
Yeah, there is a bit of that. There is a warmth and a familiarity, but that's a double-edged sword. It can be good or bad, because you start getting the feeling that there is no privacy. Because I make the joke all the time, if you don't know somebody, you know somebody who does know them, and if you wait long enough, they'll marry into your family.
Yeah, well, see, that's a funny.
But it doesn't take long for news to travel in a small town.
So that is a double-edged sword. But here's the thing: you're right about anonymity here in a way, but not in your block. It's the same difference.
No, well, yeah, but that's true in every neighborhood. If somebody sneezes 2 houses over, you can hear them if you're outside. But that's in every neighborhood.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is if Fred next door goes out dancing with Ethel down the block, the whole block knows it within 48 hours, because there aren't any places to go where you aren't known. Somebody knows you,
Yeah. Just like, at the local watering, hole. Did you see what Ethel was wearing that night? Unbelievable. And then all of a sudden,
yeah,
1936, Ethel wore a red dress. Everybody remembers it forever.
Yeah, and that is the case, because you got to drive 2 hours to get to a town that's got any kind of nightlife where you're not going to be known. So, you have to really plan ahead if you're going to do something on the shady side.
Like over dinner, can you believe how the Hendersons were dressed at church today? I can't believe it. I'm calling so-and-so and letting her know. And it's just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the down south, down in your neck of the woods. I've heard it called the coconut telegraph.
Oh, yeah.
It's just basically on the phone and text messages and everything else, So, if you're squeaky clean and don't ever step out of line, you're probably fine. But then the whole valley knows that you're squeaky clean, and you're like, oh, look at Goody Two Shoes over there, thinks he's better than the rest of us, that kind of thing. So,
there's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then again, you've got the other side of town where if you don't have a major appliance in your front yard and a car up on blocks, you're considered uppity,
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It's funny to to say that, but over here, there's all these things apply that you just mentioned. It's just and by the way, traveling over towards the other neck of the woods where I went to for Christmas, it's a totally different vibe.
Yeah,
like I'm in a place that is very, so everybody can be nosy, but over there you don't notice it because it's a little bit more spacious, between houses and this and that. Over here, you've got like dude, literally, I can hear when the neighbor coughs, dude.
Yeah.
You know?
And and you get the personality of each one of your neighbors. Did you ever watch? I had a real troubling realization this summer. Did you ever watch that old sitcom called Bewitch?
Yeah.
You remember the nosy neighbor across the street, Mrs. Kravitz, always looking through the blind to see what was going on. That I found out I am that neighbor. When they were building a house across the way, I go out onto my front deck and I just look over the fence and I'm just kind of watching. Oh, they're laying the foundation. Oh man, that's pretty cool. You know, and then I look, oh, those guys, they mowed their lawn. That's looking real nice over there. And it just suddenly struck me. Go back in the house, Mrs. Kravitz. It ain't none of your damn business.
It's a weird thing. I am totally different in that respect. I want to like block everybody out to an extreme.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what they're doing. I don't, the only reason I do know is because they're so damn loud.
Well, this is true. A lot of things, not necessarily because you wanted to, but I mean, even though I've worked,
I didn't mean to hold on. Well, I just want to say, I didn't mean to put you in the position. See, now it's like, I've like stamped oh, he's the nosy one. No.
I didn't mean that. No, I didn't take it that way at all. But some of this stuff, even though I've worked construction, they're building a house across the street. Yeah, I'm going to look.
You can't
not. I'm a little kid going, oh man, check it out. They're building. All right, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know any male who can watch somebody run a bulldozer and not stand there and look at it for at least a couple of minutes. That's just cool, And
but I hear my neighbors' conversations.
Yeah, that's a little troubling.
They talk. Okay, like if let's say you live close and you come over, hey, what's going on, Mark, and this and that, and we start talking. I talk at a level within our scope of where we're at. I don't talk loud so that the neighbors can hear what we're saying.
Right.
I don't know if it's just me. I don't think it's appropriate for other people to know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Whether it's a private conversation or not, they don't need to freaking know. Well, these people, I swear to you, make it an effort. I'm talking about a few, to let everyone by talking at full volume. And it's a couple of neighbors, and it's like, I just don't appreciate that. Now, but you've heard this before. I've mentioned that before.
Well, now let me ask you this about that. Is it volume or is it the tone, the range of the voice? Because like Linda and I can sit and talk like you and I are now, just a normal conversation. But her voice is in that range that it just travels. She doesn't speak loudly. It's just in that range to where people, if we're out in the backyard talking, the neighbors can hear that I'm talking, but they can understand what I'm saying. They can understand every word she's saying. It's just in that tonal range.
Do you remember? I'll give you an example. Do you remember the people back in the day when they were on the phone talking to a loved one and it was like a long distance call, but the connection wasn't that great, or whatever, and they'd scream, "Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?" That.
Yeah.
These people talk like that when they're in front of one another. And really, I do have resentment towards it because I feel that it's very invasive, but it comes in with a lot of other things. Mm-hmm. They're actively nosy and all these things. Now, they have behaved more in recent time, but I had to put my foot down in money because from across, hey, how's it going? This and that, and then they start walking over to you, and still like, I don't want none of that.
Yeah.
I don't want none of it. Now, I'm not trying to put out a lot of personal, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. We're recording this for posterity. I am quite I want to be around the people that I like to be around, and I don't want to be around people that I don't. I've come to the point where I realize I want to be around people that I want to be around, and I don't want to be around them.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you come home from the store, you park your car, and you see them out in the yard, and you getting out going, please don't say hello, please don't say hello, please don't say hello.
Yes.
Hi,
Yeah.
Eloy. Damn it. Yeah.
That's exactly. And guess what else? I'll throw this one in as well. I make an effort because of that you just said. I'll take all my groceries if I can in one walk to the house. So I'll have I'll be carrying like all the bags like they fold up, and I'll take them all in because I don't want to. It's
Yeah.
that to that extreme.
Don't want to engage.
Maybe that's on me, but yeah, I'm quite the loner when it comes to that. But they are annoying,
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, we had one neighbor like that, and thankfully they moved. It was one of those cases of, oh no, here he comes. I would time it. I would kind of go out on the front porch and time it to where he was back to his house. He'd gone and got the mail and was back to his house before I left my house to go get the mail. And then it was just kind of one of those put blinders on and head towards the mailbox and not turn around and notice that he was there until I was well past and couldn't hear, oh, hi, you doing? And then just turn around and keep going to the mailbox,
I mean, I'm telling you, dude.
So
yeah, man, I'm so with you on that. I just, so yeah. So in the long run, and there is the issue of that the more rural might look appealing, but might not necessarily be, let's say. I doubt it.
It depends on what your priorities are. If you're looking for privacy and solitude, you really can't beat it. If you want company and need to be doing things all the time, if you're looking for nightlife and want to go out and do this, that, or the other, there's not a lot happening.
Right.
So there's that double-edged sword as well. I mean, you want solitude, you can get it, but that solitude comes with the good or bad. So
I get that. Well, I mean, we have a bunch of places to go here, so that's true. There is no shortage of adventure that you can have. But here's the thing. I've been here all my life, and you know what? I don't frequent, more so recently, these places because to get there, find parking, there's a whole list of things. And then when you're there, it's kind of the thing where when you go to the movie theater and someone butts their feet on the back of your chair, there's always that disturbance. I don't know if it's happened to you before.
Oh, sure.
Well, here, those feet butting up against you is everywhere you go. Yeah. So it's an extreme. You can't necessarily enjoy, and there's beautiful places.
Yeah.
But what does that count for? If you're rubbing shoulders to shoulders with other people walking it. So it's kind of a thing, a problem.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that when you are local to something. For instance, you drove airboats out in the Everglades. Had you ever gone out and done that yourself as a tourist, been the passenger in an airboat?
See, yeah, I have once or twice, but because people came to visit.
But before you went out there and did that for a living? No. Yeah, and it's the same thing here. For instance, we live about an hour and a half away from Crater Lake. We've lived here back in Oregon for 7 years. Linda's never been to Crater Lake. It's just one of those things, it's there, but you have to plan and make a special trip to go up and go.
Yeah.
She's never been there. We both forget it's there. It's just not one of those things that we want to go do.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody comes and visits and wants to go see it, we'll do it. So I know exactly what you're talking about. You wouldn't think about going on an airboat tour unless there was somebody coming to visit you that wanted to go.
Yeah, I don't wake up and say, you know what? Airboat tour time.
Yeah. I mean, and we don't wake up and say, let's go to Crater Lake. The first year we lived in Hawaii, we didn't do anything. We drove around and we found the places. We figured out how to get there, but we didn't go in because we knew that when people came over to visit us, that would be the first thing they wanted to do. They wanted to go to a luau, then they wanted to go to the Polynesian Cultural Center, then they wanted to go out to Pearl Harbor and to the Arizona Memorial. So we figured out the easiest and the best ways to get to those places, but we didn't go ourselves because we didn't want to be bored stiff walking them around,
Oh, that's cool.
So and it worked out fine for us.
Well, it's funny thing though. It's because there is, it's funny. Did you guys pre-plan that? Did you actually?
Yes, we did. I made it. She goes, well, do you want to go out and do? No, let's go find how to get there. Now we did go down to like Waikiki Beach and walk around down there to find the cool
Right.
places to go. Went out and went swimming and what have you. I mean, if you go
That's
to
a funny
Waikiki, you have to go to the beach. I mean, it's just it. But it's, the big tourist attractions we didn't go to because we knew everybody that came to visit us would want to go to those things.
See, that's a funny thing. So I have to think of. So that's a funny thing because it's funny that you thought that because when people. So I find it thrilling or the fun in it when somebody does come, even though you've been to the place. I mean, I get what you're saying though. Like you're right, but like seeing vicariously through them that they are experiencing this new place and stuff is in itself, even though you've done it, is a thrill. It's funny that you said, we're gonna do this once and we'll all enjoy it. I'm not having that.
So when my parents came over to visit, they wanted to go to the Polynesian Cultural Center. It's okay. We've never been ourselves. So it was a new experience for us. The only difference was we knew how to get there. So we weren't running around blind, making wrong turns and everything else. And that everybody wanted to go to a luau, and there were 3 or 4 different luau companies there that's what they did. That was their big tourist attraction draw. So we hit the different ones each time somebody. So it was new for us.
Right.
Now, I'll be honest with you, the Arizona Memorial, we waited and we went with Linda's folks, and I couldn't get enough of that place. It was always a real moving experience for me every time we went. And we went without folks after we went the first time. We would just, you want to go to the Arizona Memorial? Yeah, let's go. And we would go down. It really is something. It really is something.
Let me tell you this thing. I don't know if I told you last time, but for everybody listening, I find interesting to me things on the internet all the time because but to me, I don't know how it'll sit with others, but talking about that and your psychology, you and Linda's psychology over, which I find it's an interesting thing. I like the fact that you pre-planned. You said, you know what, we're gonna have a truckload of visitors.
Yeah.
And I am not about to deal with going to a place I've already seen. So let's make it beautiful for all of us.
It's not that we would have already seen it. It's just that we would have already seen it about 30 times.
Right.
Because the minute folks hear Hawaii, people that, and I'm not trying to bad talk my friends or my family.
No, I get the point.
But people who wouldn't walk across the street to say happy birthday wanted to suddenly come spend 2 weeks with us. So we knew we were going to have our share of visitors.
Right.
Now, it wasn't that bad. It was mainly her folks, her sister and niece, and then my folks. But and they came at various times. And the first time they all came over, we stayed right there on Oahu, and we hung out there and did the touristy things there.
Yeah.
Then the next time they came, we flew to another island.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
And went and did the things over there. We went to Maui with my parents. Then we went to the Big Island the next time they came. And then we did the same thing with her folks. So
my thing though, what I enjoyed most about you explaining that to me is the fact that you made a conscious effort to sit and analyze the situation that was It's a good one, dude.
We planned that out. I mean, even down to the furniture we had when we were transferred from Georgia to Hawaii, we knew we needed to buy new furniture. Okay. So we bought a new sofa that was a fold out. It was a hide-a-bed. And the salesman is sitting there going, okay, let's see. We can give you the innerspring mattress with this and that and the other. And I said, okay, let me save you the sales pitch. We're moving to Hawaii. I want about 2 weeks worth of comfort. And he just got a big grin on his face and said, okay, we can do that. So we didn't get the cheapest mattress for it, but we got one that folks would be able to tolerate for a couple of weeks. Then suddenly it's like, we got to go home. I'm not sleeping so good on that. It's like, okay. So,
I wanted to say that. So going back to the what I was gonna say is that I ran into a couple of interesting things on the internet.
Okay.
And I forgot one, but I remember the other one. Actually, now I remember both. Okay, so the first one, there's a couple, and there's a few people that do this that live in Disney, close to Disney, out in California, and another group that lives in the Orlando one, and they live there. And I'm sure that that's happened. Family comes, they live there. They're gonna do Disney again and again. Well, they did a crazy thing, which is not so crazy. They decided to open a YouTube channel, and basically go live while they're traveling through Disney World, nonstop, as much as YouTube allows a stream, which is 11 hours or something like that. And they literally go for like 11 hours, and they just walk around and film things and live, and people interact, and they send them super chats and the whole it's
really?
Yeah, dude.
See, I never would have thought of something like that.
Yeah, and so people can go and watch Disney, what's going on, and they take them through, and then they'll even sit the camera down and say, okay, folks, we're going to eat now, and they put it facing out so they can see people on the show, and they'll eat. You could hear them eating and talking, and they just let the camera, show the people walking around.
And Disney doesn't have a problem with that. I would have thought there'd be some sort of a copyright thing because of all the music and this, that, and the other that's going on in the background.
I mean, it's like ambient. It's not like the film is focusing on it, but I guess it's a gray area.
Yeah.
It would be a gray area.
Well, I'm sure if they had a problem with it, they wouldn't have it up long.
No, it's actually marketing for Disney, and it's free if you think about it on a certain level. Because no matter how much you watch it through, the internet, it's a different story to actually be there. There's positives to not having to go to places, though. And
I hear you.
But
you can only do the same thing so many times before it begins to be old hat, and we just didn't want that to happen. That's the main reason that we kind of planned things out the way we planned them out. Yeah. So that when we went up to when we flew to the Big Island and walked around Kilauea Crater up there on the volcano, it was new for us. Yeah. The same time it was new for my mom and dad.
Oh, that's great.
So it was just kind of trying to plan things out. We ended up doing a few things a couple of times, but always the stuff that was actually worth doing, like the Polynesian Cultural Center. I mean, I could go there every week and still have a ball.
Yeah.
But, there are only so many times that you can walk around in Diamond Head Crater before you realize that you're just in a blown out crater, and there's rocks all around you.
I mean, it's good the first time, right? Or the second time, but like if you're there all the time, it's like everything else.
Well, I mean, how thrilled were you about airboats after you drove them for so many years?
They were always fun, but after you get to, I'll give you an example, like going down the canal, which is wooded on both sides. You have sort of like these elevated mud flats or patches, mounds, and they allow for the growth of trees and plants, so it becomes like wooded, but you have waterways and all that, and then you try. So the first month, you're pointing things out, but you're like, well, maybe there's something other even further in, and there's a mystery and sort of like, but after you've been there for a few years, that there's nothing going back in there except more trees and plants. You know what the gators are and aren't going to do. Where gators are going to be. Not 100%. We named them too, and you could tell them apart at one point.
Yeah. See, and I didn't want it to be that way.
Yeah.
So I like to keep it, refreshing. So.
So the last one I'll tell you, and I guess we have time to get into the other bit?
Well, we can if you want to. You can go as long as you want. It's my edit, so.
Okay. Well, so the other one I wanted to tell you that I found interesting is that I found this YouTube channel, and let me see if I can find the name, because I found it super interesting. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay, perfect. It's called Obsolete Oddity.
Obsolete Oddity.
And I don't know what their other videos are like, but the title of this video that they made, and I'll explain what it is. It's called The New York Socialite Who Lived in a Decaying Hotel Room for 24 Years.
Huh.
And it struck me, right? I mean, that title's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, they did a good job with that title on its own. Well, what they did was, I don't know if it's real or not, but they told a story with images and a little bit of old footage, reels and stuff, and they set about telling this really intricate story within like a 24-minute span or whatnot.
Uh-huh.
And I was captivated, dude. I was freaking captivated.
I'll check it out. Obsolete Oddity. Okay, I'll have to look for it. I'm starting to run out of people building barns and remodeling houses, and it's starting to get a little bit, come on, dude. You've been gonna lay that tile now for 6 videos. When you gonna get to it? So
Yeah.
it's kind of getting to be old hat. So I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to check that out and see what's going on.
It was interesting. The guy has like some sort of like a British accent. He's probably British, and maybe they are. And I don't know for sure, but I think that that's the theme of their channel. So they tell these interesting, and this particular story was really well, like they set out in his British voice, and he's like explaining the beginning of the story, and I'm like, holy smokes. And I was thinking, is it real? Is this an actual, or is it a story? I came to the conclusion that it's a story put together in video fashion with old clips and making it like a little featurette, very, very interesting. I love the theme of that.
I like old stuff like that. I mean, you posted a video on your channel, Rockin' Woodworks, for those of you who don't know. It was footage from Cuba from the 19 teens or the 1920s?
Footage of Cuba?
Footage. No, you didn't post it. You linked me to it. I'm sorry. It wasn't on your channel, but still go to Rockin' Woodworks on YouTube and check that out.
Even though you won't find that footage, but go there anyhow.
You won't find that footage, but you will find some interesting stuff about, everything. Believe me, everything. You shared me a link to that. It was footage from Havana from the 1920s, out at the horse races, and then downtown in one of the local clubs and what have you, where it was, oddly enough, it was mainly men in the
film
club.
footage.
Yeah, it's like, we won't serve ladies here.
Well, it was during Prohibition. Well, I don't know if that was necessary. I don't know. But it was during Prohibition. So for a fact, people would travel from the U.S. there so they could get their, their whiskey.
12, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Prohibition, not a good idea.
Well, yeah, gee, does that happen? Do we have bad ideas in this country?
I mean, that for sure was not a good thing. But that old footage, stuff like that is interesting to me. Obviously, I dig that, with the history research we're doing and all that stuff. So
I like old stuff like that. If you go on YouTube and look, and I wouldn't know what you'd search for. You'd probably have to look for drive down Market Street or something like that. There is footage of driving through San Francisco in one of the first cars in the early 1900s. Yeah,
one.
Well, there's one where a guy is driving a car because he does change lanes and go around, but it's driving down Market Street to the end of Market Street, and it's about 15 minutes long. And you're watching the pedestrians and folks and all the old clothes and all the old buildings and everything else. And it's really cool. And then there's another video that was shot like in the 1920s or the 1930s, that same trip. And you can see the changes that occurred over the short time period. It was really some cool stuff.
There's one about LA and they're literally driving through like classic like Wilshire and La Brea, up, different.
Yeah.
And you look at it, the car's driving, and actually, what the guy did was that he split screened it, kind of like we're
Yeah.
split screen right now. And by the way, for those folks listening, we go live every Tuesday, except today because we have a special holiday.
Yeah.
But we do go live on YouTube, so you can check us out, Trampled Underfoot Podcast, on YouTube, and press that subscribe button and click the bell as well, so you can check us out.
You'll get a notification when we go live.
Yeah. So they have a split screen. They have on one side the vintage footage, and on the other side, it's the guy that took that vintage footage. And by the way, I like this theme, and I'm going to try something similar with pictures, where you'll take a picture from your photo album, and I've got Sweetwater all around me, and I've been taking pictures of, since I was a little kid, everywhere here, everywhere.
Yeah.
I have thousands and thousands of pictures, I got stacks right now that I brought from anyways. So, and he drives down the same road that the vintage footage is driving, and he does the same stops and everything. You can see the changes. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I what? That's a good idea. I need to do that with Medford, because I have found a bunch of old photographs of Medford that I could set up cameras and take the same shot. There may be a couple that would cause me to get out in the middle of traffic, but I think I could time the lights.
That would be
cool, actually.
Yeah, for people that like history and like the lore of these, I would be glued to watching that.
Yeah,
100%. Because I do anyhow, right? I want to know. I'm geared in that direction. I was gonna say another thing.
Sorry.
Oh, well, no. I discovered a interesting feature in that program that you use, Family Search.
Uh-huh.
There's a tab. I don't know if you've used it, but it's a tab that says memories on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you've used it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, I discovered.
Go ahead and explain it to folks that may not know it.
There's a site called Family Search, and it's run by the Church of Latter-day Saints, right?
Church of Christ of Latter-day Saints, yeah.
And so it's a free site, and you could do a whole bunch of research there for free and build your tree, and they have a lot of documentation. Like, these people are the ones that they've done a great job. Well, there's a tab, apart from all these things you could do with that, so you can build a family tree, find relatives and all that. Another thing is that there's a tab called the Memories tab. You press that tab and it'll open up. You can type in whatever surname or whatever, and it'll populate a series of photographs, documents, all under the criteria that you've typed in.
Right.
And boy, it's now you have to sift through a ton of stuff, but you get all these families that have been uploading stuff, pictures, birth certificates, all these things. And it's, I just discovered it today.
Well, the way FamilySearch.org works is each person entered into the database is given an identification number. So like my father, Donald Lindsay, he was given an identification number. And while he was alive, that was all kept private. They do not give out any information on anybody still living.
That's right.
But when he passed away and I entered, his death, and I didn't scan a copy of his death certificate, but I did scan a copy of his obituary. I attached that in the memories. So anybody else who searches for Donald Lindsay, or anybody else who has them in their family tree, they got that in the memories, because all of those things that are uploaded, pictures I've uploaded and stories I've told and what have you, are attached to that identification number. So if somebody else who has him in the family tree, like his sister, my aunt, she can pull that up and she can see the photos that I've added, and she can see his obituary and all that other good thing. So it's very cool. I have found photos of relatives that I didn't know existed through that.
That's an amazing thing. I didn't. I've been using it more as the indexing side of it, where it just gives the raw information. I look at it, and it'll have a little camera next to that person if it has any document. And I've seen that, but I never knew that you could list it all in the fashion that. So that's an extra awesome feature because you can literally look visually picture wise and whatnot. Now I will say one thing that annoys me that people do with all this genealogy stuff that I've started to notice,
So,
or I've noticed for a while, that they will upload a bunch of photographs with lackluster or altogether missing information,
right.
where you'll have a name, maybe so it's something that's useful for you, but the amount of information that maybe they don't have extra information for it, but it's apparent to me that a lot of folks just toss it up on there and throw caution, and it's not the way to do it. You want as much documentation, because we talked about that in the beginning.
Right.
You said and Steve as well. And incidentally, was Steve that really got I don't know. I think that Steve, and we're talking about Steve Nealon, which, by the way, he runs this site called Harneal Media. And if you need a website, it's a more personalized way to set one up, and you can have a bunch of features. And so you can go to harnealmedia.com and check that out, and just reach out to him and let him know what you need. Very good service and family oriented. But it was Steve that said, "Hey, try this and this and that." And he opened up a tree for me. It just opened up a whole avenue, because being able to organize. But you guys did mention, I recall, that we want a preponderance of information to confirm.
Oh yeah, the more information you can get from different sources, the better. It's easier to track people that way. It's also easier to separate family folklore from fact. If you think your Uncle Jeffrey was born in Minneapolis, and you find Uncle Jeffrey on the familysearch.org website, and somebody has a copy of his birth certificate, says, "Oh no, he was born in Oklahoma City," you now have a little bit of confirmation.
Yeah.
And it is, as I say. Now, as far as incomplete information, a lot of times you just don't know. Like, we know on my mother's side, going back, oh my gosh, I don't remember how many generations it was. I want to say 4 generations. It goes back to a man by the name of Dempsey Methvin. But that's all we know. We know his name and the year he died, but that's all we know. We don't know his parents. We don't know where he was born. We don't know where he died. We don't have him listed in any census. He's just kind of there. But he died in the 1830s.
Okay.
And so record keeping wasn't very good back then. Some places records were kept, some places they weren't. And if somebody died and they didn't have any property, they just got buried there on the family homestead.
Yeah.
So we just don't have any more information to add, but we're hoping that somebody else will. And so far, nothing has been populated into it. So,
I mean, it's. I'll tell you one thing which I did not mention to you. I have names floating around, and Steve had told me, you might not necessarily want to do that and this and that, but I tossed it into my tree, unconnected, or not associated with anyone, but it's floating in there. And so in my mind, I was thinking that they would branch together, the more people from closer to my time heading out into the past, and eventually they unite. I didn't want to lose those people, so
right.
And just Christmas Day, I had a week prior sent a message to a lady that had those people in her tree.
Uh-huh.
And she got back to me on Christmas Day.
Oh, nice.
And well, there's a plus and a minus to this. So the plus is that she says to me, give me your email and I'll send you what I know. She sent me what and I already had that information on my tree. And then she said, well, what's your kit number in your DNA thing over on another site called GEDmatch to see if my father matches you in blood,
Okay.
you know? And I said, okay. And I gave her the kit number and she gave me her father's and we matched. Now it's tiny. And this is going back to the 1600s.
Okay.
So at that point, it's like tiny.
Sure.
Amount of sharing. But the point is that there's that connection. So it verified that we have an association. Right. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, the association could be from a multitude of different branches because we're going back to this. But the name matches the time, the branch of the family. So I now can confirm that. What I can't the bad side is that I can't confirm.
Yeah.
If it was because that branch of Escagedo and Salmon was actually Salmon and Escagedo reversed.
Uh-huh.
So maybe a brother and a sister of the other one or something, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Rematched up. So now I know that they're related, but I can't branch it yet to my side because
you have to make those connections. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was an interesting thing,
Yeah. And, there's nothing wrong with because I do the same thing. You find a name, you can't make the connection, you set it aside. I'm not eliminating them, but I can't make a connection. And one of two things would have happened when she contacted you and said, this is what we have and matched up your kit numbers. Either you would confirm that there was a connection there, or you would confirm that there wasn't. Then you could go ahead and set them further off to the side, maybe not totally eliminate them, but you can set them further off the side and focus your attention elsewhere. So, even whether it's a confirmation that's positive or negative, it's good information to have.
Yeah, because it at least it clarifies, or at least it sifts out possibilities, and it sort of whittles down to a closer wherever you want to go with it. One last thing I wanted to tell you about this whole bit is that I came across a book, and I've come across a lot of books PDF style, and it's been very helpful for me. At least helpful in that, because that you could press a Control F on a PDF.
Yeah.
And it pops up a little search bar. And I've been using that. So I'll download a PDF, a truckload of them that are of ancient, and then I'll start searching for names and key names. Right. And I'll come into little sections and I can read that, extract from it, and this and that. And I found one with the researcher in the family, the priest that we've talked about in the past. Yeah. And he was a researcher. And what he did was in the early 1900s, 1900 and beyond, he was born in the 1880s. He would go from town to town, in valley to valley, and he would knock on people's door, and they would let him into these old houses, which were nothing more than these 2-story built with rock. Inside it was contemporary to whatever that time, but on the outside it was just rocks built up. And they had libraries with scrolls and parchments and big books, and he would go from town to town finding all the information and jotting it down, rewriting it in modern Spanish from the old style with whatever weirdness they had, because they did have some strangeness going on that one would not understand today very well. And he did that. Well, in this PDF that I downloaded, he talked about what he was doing, and he says that it should be a national shameful thing, the condition that many of these documents in personal hands. I have been doing this for the greater part of 25 plus years, going from township to township and this and that. and some were waterworn, rotted. And he goes over the explanation of what condition and what he was working with. And I guess the point I wanted to make was that, in contrast, me sitting here today,
Mhm.
I'm doing everything via the computer,
Right.
and I'm complaining. But this guy was actually getting on. They didn't even have cars probably at some point. They started having cars, but they would have to wagon or whatever the heck they did from
Mhm.
township to township to find documents that may or may not have what he needed.
Yeah.
And I'm here, outside of us here live, complaining when I can't, make, the right connections,
Right.
frustrated and stuff in the comfort of my air controlled room, you know.
When you think about the totality of human knowledge and human existence, this digital thing is just a blip. I mean, when you think about the billions of documents out there in private hands and in public hands, or in museums, or just in archives somewhere, that have never been scanned digitally, and maybe haven't even been handled or read for 300, 400, 500 years. It's a wonder, that we know anything. I mean, we only know that we just don't know. That's all we know for sure, is that we don't know, because the information is out there somewhere. We just haven't found it yet.
It could be in a vault. It could be in a trunk in somebody's attic,
It,
just sitting rolled up.
then, then again, it could have been destroyed in a fire 2 years ago, or it could have disintegrated due to, I mean, I don't have anything around here. I have no way of keeping a parchment scroll in good condition. And the average person back then had even less of a way to keep that kind of a scroll.
Imagine the amount of documentation, and not just, in this example with Spain, but around the world, that people in very rural situations, because this is what it comes down to. Let's say you have an outstanding person that documents and does things back in the 1800s, 1600s, and that person has a lifespan of whatever he has, but he has family members and they inherit all this. They may keep it around for sentimental reasons. They might not be educated enough to process it. They may have no immediate need because they're better off, milking cows and selling and, making cheeses and trying to make a living. And then these documents, by the time it gets down a generation or two or three, those people, what they don't know, nobody knows about it anymore. These are important. They might chuck it in the fire.
They don't even care. Maybe
They don't even
know
care.
exactly what they've got. They just don't care.
Yeah.
You and I both know people that just don't care about their family history.
Yeah.
And that's, that's fine, to each their own. Not saying anything bad about it. Just saying it is what it is. I mean, but we have kind of a different outlook on it, because we see it as history and a vital part of our being, who we are.
100%.
I mean, there's a reason those of you who are listening on the podcast don't know what I'm talking about, but we have little captions at the bottom of our little split screen here on YouTube, and we put little slogans and sayings in there. It's supposed to be to put your name, and I have some words in Scottish Gaelic down at the bottom of my screen, and mine in Scottish Gaelic is kind of a connection to me because I'm of Scottish descent, and I just think it's cool. And it's Bliana Va Ur is how you pronounce it, and it simply means Happy New Year.
Oh, nice.
So, but there's a little bit of a connection there because I don't speak Scots Gaelic. It's a dying language. There aren't a whole lot of people who do speak it anymore. Folks have heard of Gaelic, which is Irish, but Scots Gaelic is different. It was a different language entirely. But there's that connection there, and I want to try to kind of keep it alive a little bit.
Very cool.
So it's just, there are certain things that we have that we like to keep going, and there are certain things that are important to everybody. and the people in the time frame that you're talking about, maybe they cared, maybe they didn't. I mean, family history is only as important as the person who is handling it. And if they just don't think it's worth anything, it's not going to be handled correctly.
You could have a situation in the, let's say, in the example, in the 1700s,
Mm-hmm.
there's a house in Spain that's a huge stone house, and it has a chiseled into the rock face window side a coat of arms with
Mm-hmm.
a helmet and all sorts of stuff and this and that, and it says Escagedo on it, and it says 17 something. And you could imagine whoever those people were. I don't know who they were, although I have an idea. They might be the same people from that lady that I connected with on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
But we're still, but that house, there's people living there now, and it's like a huge, and they convert a lot of these houses into, like, I guess, breakfast, or what do you call it?
Bed and breakfast.
Yeah, stuff like that. And so it could very well be that inside these houses they had these libraries with all these things, and who knows, somebody bought it, chucked the documents in the fire, who knows what. But you have these living structures, or still erect structures with a stamp of a certain time, and the information around it may or may not be there. But that's kind of like what we're talking about. These things from the past, they tell us where our forefathers have been, and where, we come from, in that, in that sense. And it helps sort of, it opens up a view, a window, that we're a continuum, just helpful in many ways. But without the documentation back then,
Mm-hmm.
that we do have,
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be driving blind.
Yeah.
If people don't do it now,
Right.
it's not as bad, because if you're born, you're gonna have, you know what I'm saying? Unless you're born, and are hidden forever, but you can't not have a birth certificate nowadays reasonably.
Yeah.
Or can you?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
But percentage wise, that's not.
No. It just depends on, it depends on the country, it depends on the state, or the principality, it depends on the county. I mean, some people kept records, some people didn't. And disasters happen all the time. I mean, look at Notre Dame.
No, I'm talking about now.
Well, yeah, but but even today, you're asking, do people have birth certificates?
No, I'm saying that do people, like, it's unreasonable to think that most people, by a large, percentage, most people do have birth certificates. A small amount might possibly. Eventually, you have to find, in America, you need to have something to conduct your business with.
Right.
So it's unreasonable to think that, but there might be people out there that don't.
But yeah, there are people out there that don't, because it's not important to them. I mean, their parents got the birth certificate when they were born, but they've never had a need to go get one. I mean, my grandkids are that way. I'm sure they don't have their birth certificates. Their mothers do.
Oh, no. No, I'm saying registered. Like, let's say no one born in America, except for somebody up in the mountains, because their parents were like, from a logging community and never came back.
No, you're right. A live birth does have to be registered. Yeah, so the person is just a non-person. You have to be able to prove who you are, where you.
Right. So
I'm sure there have been cases where somebody was born in a cabin in the woods, and
they never. Martha, are we gonna go to town this next week to do that whole birth certificate thing? No, Charlie, not this,
Yeah, I'm sure that there are cases like that today. I mean, I can imagine folks that live way out in the middle of nowhere in Alaska and what have you don't bother with that. But
you're gonna go out in this stuff? No, I don't.
Yeah, really. They see somebody else besides the folks who live there, they see somebody else once a year. There's
Yeah.
4 people living in a cabin. you know.
But yeah, but like what I'm saying is that we're kind of like figured out at this point.
Sure.
But what's important is those things back then and the missing pockets that.
Well, but then again, you say that it's kind of easy to find various and sundry things, and it is. It would be easy for anybody to find my father, or his father,
Yeah.
or even his father, but just having date of birth, date of death, and maybe a photograph of the person sometimes isn't enough. Because I mean, look at what you're going through right now and trying to track people down.
Yeah.
Well, 100 years from now, somebody may be looking for you. And I've told this story before. I was fortunate enough, I was talking to my father about it, and I said, do me a favor one day, just sit down and write your story. He says, what do you mean? I says, explain your life to somebody who may be looking for you in 100 years. And he's like, okay, I'll do that. And so he sat down and he wrote it. It ended up being like 40 pages. I didn't want a novel. I was just like, what did you do for a living?
Yeah.
What did, you were in the Navy. Talk about that a little bit. When did you go in? Where were you stationed? This, that, and the other. Because somebody someday is going to be looking for you, and they're going to want to know who the heck this Don Lindsay guy was.
That's awesome, dude.
So tell them who you are. And he did. And I've been working on mine. I've got it. I'm current, up to date on mine now. But it's the same. And he sent each of my kids a copy, sent me a copy, sent my brother a copy, and he sent my uncle a copy to keep hold of. And so and then we've got digital copies all over the place too. But if anybody is looking down the road, they'll be able to find that. I've placed a copy also in our local genealogical museum.
Oh, awesome, dude.
In the folder on our family, my ancestors. So there's a record somewhere, and it's just one of those cool things, because somebody will be looking for you one day.
It's an insane. So I recently pulled my dad's computer and set it up.
Oh, wow.
And I went to look through it and stuff to see what I could find. And I know that my dad did a lot of record keeping on a whole host of things. He has thousands of names of people killed because of the issues in Cuba. Mm-hmm. And he's categorized them, and he would send out letters and wait for them to come back and make sure to confirm. And so he has all these things. And but I also found our family tree in there.
Nice.
And he had set it up. And so I grabbed as much as I could. I was tired. I turned off the computer and I put it in a folder and this and that. Then I went back. Now the computer doesn't start, dude. I got all this information. It won't even start.
You're going to have to pull that hard drive and put it in another computer so you can get to that stuff.
Yeah, dude. So there's a trend of interest in this thing in my family, it appears. Because I was doing that on my own anyhow. Obviously, he was doing it first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that, and as you get older, that kind of thing becomes a little bit more important. I mean, my grandson is not interested in this kind of stuff at all. He's just not. I mean, he thinks it's cool. I mean, I showed him a picture of it would have been his 5 times great grandfather.
That's a trip.
And he just kind of, holy cow, man, he kind of freaked out. And so I told him a little bit of the story, and he thought the story was cool. And, I'll let him know, hey, his grave is 30 miles away. The next time we're up that way, we'll stop. Okay, that would be pretty cool, because he's got a very large marker. It's a very large monument. But he's not really interested in the hunt and the thrill of the chase and the search and discovery. He's willing to listen to the stories, and he thinks the stories are cool. He had no idea about these people coming out on wagons or anything like that.
Right.
But he's 23. Why would he? I mean, he's caught up in his life and starting, he's doing the adult thing, and working.
It's your job of what you're doing, to take that history and hand it to him, which is what you're doing in those. And the importance of that could not, because it creates a lot of different situations for a person. It creates a solid place to, when you give that to him, he may not focus on it now, but he'll remember that and he'll find placement. And that's a powerful thing.
I want him to be proud of who he is and what he is. And I figure by letting him know where he came from, maybe he can find something in there that gives him a little bit of a sense of pride.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
Not something to boast about. Oh, I'm not like one of you commoners. I'm this and I'm descended from that. Nothing like that. But in order, I really honestly think, in order to understand who you are, you should know at least some of where you came from, to know who you are. And if there's something there that you are kind of proud of, all the better. And even if there's not something there that you can be super, super proud of, at least you have that settled in your mind. Yeah. And I find a certain amount of peace in knowing that no matter how hard I think my day is going, the people who came here before me had it much, much harder, and they made it. So maybe, I don't know if there's maybe a little bit of that Viking blood in me or something like that, but if they can persevere through that, I can make it through stubbing my toe in the middle of the night as I'm heading to the bathroom.
I mean, it's exactly the transfer of that knowledge.
Yeah.
That's vital. My grandfather did that with me, and so did my dad. The way they did it was in short little bursts. And even though I wasn't interested, let's not say not interested, I wasn't willing to commit to arduous sit down writing and all that. But even though I was doing what your grandson is doing and exploring life for the first time, but they did impart those stories to which I can now recall and say, oh, wait a second. And that's how you do it. You share as much as you can.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not like I sit and lecture him or anything like that, but we'll be talking about something or he'll point out something. We were talking about going to the Applegate River. And I said, well, you know who the Applegate River is named after, don't you? And he said, no. And so I told him the story of the three Applegate brothers, Jesse, Charles, and Lindsay Applegate. So a guy had the first name Lindsay. I said, yeah. For many, many years, Lindsay was a male name, and it still is. It's kind of interchangeable now. But it was a male first name for many, many years. And then I told him the linkage and how I said they were cousins. You were related to the Applegates. And then another time we started talking about Jesse Applegate, and because he saw the Applegate Trail signs. Well, what does that mean then? They were cousins. What does that mean? So I told him about the Applegate Trail and exploring making a new road to the west. He's like, holy cow, they did that? Yeah, they did that. And it just kind of, it's not like I'm sitting there lecturing them and putting them up slides or, a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. But it's just certain things will come up and it'll spark a memory in my brain and I'll throw it to him.
And that's awesome, because in the future, and you don't even know how it's going to be, but he's definitely going to remember that, because you don't forget what your grandpa tells you. I mean, details might get cloudy, because we're talking, like for me, my grandfather would sit me down and we'd sit and talk, and it wasn't lecturing. It was more like he'd say something and I'd be like, oh, and well, 20, 30 years down the road, I remember those conversations because it was my granddad.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can remember as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid being just absolutely fascinated over the fact that my grandmother worked at the Alameda Naval Shipyard during World War II. She was a welder. My grandmother welded on ships during World War II. My little bitty white-haired grandmother was a welder, and I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And then I found out one of my aunts on my dad's side was a ferry pilot. She ferried fighter planes from the manufacturer to the Air Force bases here. She was a fighter pilot during World War II.
Wow.
It was like, holy heck. Aunt Toby flew fighters. Yeah. It's like, oh, wow, this is so cool. And then, met up with Aunt Toby and just immediately started talking to her about it. She had some crazy stories.
Wow, dude.
It's a lot of fun if you just talk to people. I mean, you might think you know somebody, but if you sit and just talk to folks, man, they got some people have lived some fascinating lives and done some really awesome stuff.
I'm one for that. I've had conversations with people that say, just in random conversation, and they're like, "Oh, well, my life isn't that interesting, this and that. I've got nothing to say." I've talked to people that, and I don't believe that at all. I believe what you're saying. Um, a lot of people think that their stuff is just, whatever, but it's not. It's a great tale, a personal tale. And that's where the magic is. A lot of people don't realize, know.
And it's usually the people that think they haven't really led that fascinating of a life have some of the best stories because they pay more attention to detail.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you're a dirt farmer for all of your life and that's all you do but is work the fields, when something slightly remarkable happens, you remember that, you retain that, and it's something that you want to share with folks. But even something as simple as the day you got and drove your first tractor and didn't have to hitch up mules to plow a field, that's something you'll never forget. And although it was brand new and exciting to you and it's old hat to us, I'm interested in how you did it back then.
Yeah, well, see, that's how it happens, because now it becomes historical. What we're doing right now is so I don't want to say modern, but it's so contemporary. Yeah. Mark, Lindsay, and Eloy Escagedo are doing this podcast, and it's so contemporary. My goodness. Well, guess what? Eventually, soon, just like that car that people. I had an uncle that bought a car, and he drove it from the 70s on. And by the time he drove it for decades, and it became a classic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it went from new car to junker to classic.
Yeah, and so so this that we're doing now, this is so contemporary. Well, guess what? At some point, maybe past our day and age, people will come back, and we don't know how that's going to look like, but they'll look and they'll hear and see us. Maybe they'll preserve the audio. Maybe who knows what it'll look at. But people will come and say, "Wow, did they say that?" They'll say, did they have vision or did they have vision? Or they'll say, man, they totally missed the boat on that one. See, we don't know.
Exactly.
All we're doing is the best we can with what we do know at this given point in time in history.
That's right. 50 years from now, this will be like old time radio is to us.
Yeah.
So are we the 2000s version of Abbott and Costello? I don't think so.
I don't know. And by the way, for you people listening, 10,000 years in the future, Abbott and Costello were a comedy duo from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, yeah?
Further back than that, but yeah, they started.
Abbott and Costello was Abbott and Costello further back than that?
Yeah.
They started on the radio.
Yeah, they started on, well, actually they started at the tail end of vaudeville. But then teamed up in vaudeville and then on radio and then went on to movies, then finally television.
See, but now we have to explain vaudeville to them and television because we don't know what
that's a whole nother podcast because that's history for me. I've never personally seen a vaudeville show.
Oh, and incidentally, we don't even know if those people in the future are going to even be speaking the language we're speaking. There could be some futuristic click clack, sound wave thing. We don't even know that. We simply do not know. Now, for all intensive purposes, we are assuming we're going on the trek of that people are it's gonna resemble kind of like what we're at now. But don't be fooled, folks out there, because if you think about it, remember those 50s black and white science fiction sort of how the future will look movies? It looks nothing like the 2000s. What were they thinking?
Yeah. They were going with the technology that they had. and which is what we're doing now. We're going with the technology we have. I mean, like I say, uh, kids now are going, "Psst, who has a computer?" When we thought and still think computers are some of the coolest things in the world.
Yeah.
Well, 50, 60 years from now, there's going to be kids going, "Psst, they had cell phones. God, I can't imagine having to carry that thing around with me all the time."
And even what's worse is that all this that we're doing, we might totally even be just brains in this glass vat, imagining all this in our and our like limbs. We don't know. We have no idea. We could just be floating freaking brains in a vat of ooze.
I'm humming the theme to Futurama.
And you know what's even and if we are, we can't do anything about it. So
That's right. Well, I think we better wrap this up. We've been going for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So happy 2020, everyone. It's New Year's Eve. Stay safe. Be good. If you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, don't name it after either one of us.
That's right.
Happy 2020. We will, oh my gosh, 2020. Zager and Evans. It's, I don't know. We're getting closer.
It's a crazy thing. It may sound futuristic to us, not to get into it again, but this 2020 is actually like the 1910s in the future. So don't even worry about it. Just do what you like to do, folks. Do what you enjoy and do it without hurting other people. And I think that, at least to me, that's the key. So be happy as much as you can and stay safe. Well, I guess we'll see you next year. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll see you next year. Come back, join us, have some fun, and we'll see what else we can dig up out of the old treasure chest.
And we never got to, I think it's like the 5th episode, we never got to the actual conversation that we've wanted to for like 5 episodes. Is that not a fact?
That's true, but that's okay because, we can keep going this way. And then next October, I can just
bring it on.
Yeah, I can update it. So
take care, guys.
Have a happy new year.